The Atlanta Hawks have gone on an incredible run in this year's NBA playoffs. They are currently tied 2-2 in the Eastern Conference Finals versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Now probably by the time this video comes out, it could be 3-2 Milwaukee, 3-2 Atlanta. Maybe the series might be over, who knows. But as it stands, it's 2-2. Obviously Trey Young and Giannis both picking up injuries. Never want to see that in the playoffs. But, can't do anything about it. It's 2-2. And the Atlanta Hawks be more than happy with that, because who'd have thought they'd gone this far? This is their first Eastern Conference Finals appearance since the 2014-15 season, and it's been a long road back to the Conference Finals for the Atlanta Hawks. And this video, we're going to look back on that journey from the 2015 Hawks team, look back on that team, and then look at the journey back to this current team and to this current Conference Finals. So, the 2015 Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks surprised everyone by getting the first seed in the 2014-15 season, winning 60 games. Their head coach was Mike Budenholzer, who, you might say is pretty ironic that he's now the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, and they're playing the Bucks in the conference finals. But they got a young coach Bud on their team who's brought them to 60 wins. And they also got coach of the year that year in 2014-15. So they had a great young coach and they had a great team, obviously winning 60 games. The Hawks had no true superstar though on that team, but they did have 4 All-Stars on the team, including first-time All-Stars in Kyle Korver and Jeff Teague, along with Al Horford and Paul Millsap, who made a few All-Star appearances before that as well. Now, Kyle Korver, he shot 49% from 3 that year, which was the best season of his career pretty much, making his only All-Star appearance. Now, Kyle Korver, we all know, great 3-point shooter, but even for him, shooting 49%, pretty incredible. Jeff Teague, he averaged 16 points per game and 1.7 steals a game. Paul Millsap led the team in scoring that season, averaging 16.7 points per game. And Big Al Horford, as we all know, I said no true superstar, he's probably the best player on this team. He averaged around 15 points per game, but no true superstar, just a lot of good solid role players, you could say. And speaking of role players, there's some other great role players on the team that I didn't mention yet, like Dennis Schroeder come off the bench, and Kent Bazemore come off the bench, and also Damari Carroll, who was their starting small forward, I think. So, some great solid role players. And this stat will kind of prove it. They had 6 players averaging between 10 and 15 points per game for this Hawks team, which is very good, balanced scoring, as I said, no true superstar. That's got to be clear, a team effort here for the 2014-15 Hawks team. Now, the 2014-15 Hawks team starting lineup most nights was usually at point guard Jeff Teague, you would Kyle Korver at shooting guard, you had Damari Carroll as your small forward, power forward was Paul Millsap, and centre was Big Al Horford. And in the 2015 playoffs, the Hawks played obviously the first seed, so they played the 8th-seeded Brooklyn Nets, and they bet them in 6 games, which, the Nets, I think that was the net, they should have been beating the Nets a bit more, maybe in 5 games, probably not a sweep. 6 games, they kind of stretched out a bit too long for them, but still, they got past the Nets in the first round, which brought them to the second round, where they played the John Wall Washington Wizards, where they'd once again win in 6 games. And that brought them to the 2015 Eastern Conference Finals, where both the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Atlanta Hawks had to deal with injuries. LeBron was going solo without Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. The Hawks, people were dealing with injuries like Al Horford, and I think Jeff Teague was dealing with injuries. Did a few injuries, not as much people missing. The Cavaliers, they definitely had the worst of it with Kyrie and Kevin Love out. But LeBron still carried the Cavaliers to a 4-0 sweep in that series. It was still a very successful season for the Hawks, but that's a real bad way to go out after a great season like that, getting swept by a very much weakened Cavaliers team. I think it was DiVincenzo. I don't even know his name. I know Dante DiVincenzo plays for the Bucks right now. I completely forget LeBron's second man, right hand man in that 2015 season. That just shows how poor he was. So anyway, they got swept to a LeBron Cavs, pretty much just LeBron. But all in all, winning 60 games to the Hawks, getting to a conference finals, you can't complain. A pretty successful season for them. And as we all know, they traded down from Luka Doncic to Trey Young in that 2018 draft, who Trey Young has become the Hawks superstar on this current team, becoming an All-Star starter in 2020, and in this year's playoffs, he's averaging 29.8 points per game, 9.5 assists per game, shooting 32% from 3 on 9.2 threes a game, which is unbelievable. And that's the difference between this year's team and the 2015 team. The current team have a true superstar in Trey Young. He's been unbelievable in this year's playoffs, silencing the Knicks in the first round, and then coming up clutch in round 2 against the Sixers. Unfortunately, though, is currently dealing with a bit of an injury in this Bucks series, but hopefully he can come back. In the 2019 draft, they got DeAndre Hunter at number 12 overall, who is currently injured and will miss all this year's playoffs, but he's been a great addition to the team on both ends of the court. He can bring scoring, and he's a great perimeter defender to have on your team. So, and I'll say before the 2020 trade deadline, actually, the Hawks were part of a 4-team trade that sent Clint Capella to the Hawks, and Clint has become the Hawks starting center, who is grabbing 12.7 boards and also averaging 1 block in the shit playoffs. He's been great for the Hawks. He's on a good bit of money, but he's been worth it. I think, a traditional back-to-the-basket center, but he's doing a great job as this year's Hawks starting center. So let's have a look back on the Atlanta Hawks 2020 offseason, because they made some pretty major moves, bringing in some depth, squad depth, and some experience to this team. So, going into the 2020 offseason, the Hawks had some great young players, as I just mentioned, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, Trey Young obviously, Kevin Schroeder, but they needed more depth and experience, and that's what they did, bringing in Danilo Gallinari on a 3-year, $61 million deal, and he's been averaging 14.2 points per game on 39% shooting from the field in this year's playoffs. They brought in Bojan Bogdanovic, who was brought in on a 4-year, $72 million deal. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks almost had this guy in a sign and trade. I think they really wanted him. It was like they did it before the off-season opened or something, before you could sign players. So that trade wasn't allowed, and the Hawks picked him up on a 4-year, $72 million deal, and he's averaged 12.3 points per game and is shooting 30% from 3 in this year's playoffs. But he struggled in this conference finals, but in that Philly series he was unbelievable. He was their main shooter pretty much most of the way up in that Philly series, so he's been a great pickup. Rajon Rondo was brought in that offseason 2020 on a 2-year deal, but he was traded for Lou Williams at the trade deadline. So Rondo was gone, but bringing some more experience in Lou Williams, some bench scoring, and he was great in their last game 4 against the Bucks. So yeah, I think overall he's been a good pickup for them. And then in the 2021, and like I said earlier, the 2015 Hawks team had, I think, 6 players averaging between 10 to 15 points per game. Well, in this year's playoffs, the Hawks have 5 players averaging at least 10 points per game or more, which is, they do have a true superstar in Trey Young, but their role players are still doing a great job for them. So let's have a look back in the 2020-21 regular season. The Hawks started off slow in this year's regular season, and Lloyd Pierce, he got fired. He's been their head coach since 2018. He got fired after a very slow start. He left the team in the 11th seed. Nate McMillan came in, and not a lot of people were happy to see him come in an interim charge, but he did a great job. He took over and got them to the 5th seed, where they would play the 4th seeded New York Knicks in the first round. Pretty much everyone wanted the Knicks to win, because their revival story even better than the Hawks one. But that was a previous video I made. You want to check that out, Knicks fans, if you're watching this. But yeah, they beat the Knicks in the first round in 5 games. Surprised a lot of people, including myself. I thought the Knicks would win that series. Trey Young silence Madison Square Garden. That was his best years. I think he was unbelievable against the Knicks. Where they would, after beat the Knicks, they'd move on to play the 1st seeded Philadelphia 76ers, and in the second round, and they would beat them in 7, shocking the NBA, really getting everyone's attention. I remember watching game 1, fully expecting Philly to win, and the Hawks went up by like 20 points at halftime. They were unbelievable in that series, deserved to win. Obviously Ben Simmons did terrible, choked. He just didn't play well at all in that series. But fair play to the Hawks, beating the 1st seeded Sixers, and yeah, unbelievable win for them, and got everyone's attention after winning that. And that's where they would go on to play the Milwaukee Bucks in the conference finals, where, as I said many times, as this video is being recorded, it's all square 2-2, but by the time it comes out, it could be the Hawks could be out by the time this comes out, or the Hawks could be gone through, who knows. But they're playing the Milwaukee Bucks, tied 2-2, and it's been an unbelievable season for the Hawks. No matter what happens from here, whether they end up losing 4-2 to the Bucks, whether they end up losing in Game 7, whether they end up winning in Game 7, it's been a great season for them. And they have some big decisions though to make in this off-season. I'm not going to go into their off-season plan in this video, but one player they should definitely re-sign is John Collins. He turned down like a $90 million extension last off-season. He wanted to bet on himself, wants that max contract. He's deserved it. He's averaged 14.3 points per game, 8.7 boards on 36% shooting from 3 in this year's playoffs. He's been Trey Young's right hand man, as I said, the whole way up. So they should definitely pay that man. And yeah, they got some. It'll be interesting to see how far they can go in this year's playoffs. Can they make an NBA Finals? Well, Hawks fans, if it's not already over by the time this video comes out, you tell me. And if they are out by the time this video comes out, what should they do this off season? But anyway guys, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new, and turn on notifications. Stay notified when I upload. And with all that said, I'm out of here.